Welcome to Crave, the IFDA Podcast. This is a special episode. My name is Julien LeBlanc, and what I'm going to do today in the spirit of getting ready for SMART, the IFDA conference that's taking place in Miami shortly for sales and marketing leaders, I thought that I would share some observations of what I've learned through a series of podcasts so far, whether it was on camera or off camera, and what I've seen in my travels as my firm Blueprint works with many IFDA members to help them be more confident in this moment in time, whether it's around strategy, leadership, getting to yes, so all the stuff that takes place when we're trying to sell and negotiate, or coaching. Now, I really want to anchor around the opportunity of a lifetime that I believe is in front of us for all my friends that are DSRs, DSMs, or marketers supporting the sales teams. Now, if you're a manufacturer partner, I think it's important to understand what the DSRs and the DSMs need to represent your brands and really succeed with operators in 2025 and beyond. And since this is an IFDA podcast, I would like to recognize Cut and Dry. This would not be possible, this special project, without Cut and Dry as our sponsor. And Cut and Dry is the nation's leading e-commerce platform offering the seamless ability for distributors and their partner manufacturers to promote and sell more cases with our best-in-class operator user experience. In a nutshell, if you're not leaning into Cut and Dry, you're leaving money on the table, you're leaving a better experience that could be had between distributor, operator, and manufacturer. So with that said, thanks again, team. I believe the questions are the answers. As long as we're asking ourselves the right questions, it should lead to some good answers. Or another way to put it, bad question, you get the answer you deserve. Good question, it might force you to look at it through a different lens. So here we go. As much as I'm going to take a crack at answering these questions, I want you to think for yourselves as you take in this information, how would you answer this question? So let's start here. Number one, what's old is new again in many ways if you're a salesperson. What do I mean by that? The soft skills, the traditional skills, so all the things around relationship, building rapport, questioning and listening, communication, creativity, storytelling. I think I would double down. Not do I think. I believe that those that double down in these spaces will get rewarded like never before. So as much as we've got all this technology, there's I guess we're craving, there you go, no pun intended, good human interactions. So number one, get really good at the relationship side of things. Number two, of course, we're going to have to lean into technology like never before. One of the things that I love asking DSRs is describe what brings you joy in your day-to-day. No one ever says placing orders. What I hear is when I'm consulting, when I'm creative, when I'm in the kitchen, when I'm menu planning, when I'm brainstorming, when I'm having lunch with an operator and we're talking about the future of their business and helping them drive the valuation, helping them scale, helping them hire people. I never ever hear all the administrative tasks. And guess what? With tools like Cut and Dry, finally, we can focus on what we're best at and more importantly, what our customers actually want. And I'll just play with AI for a second. There was a great quote, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but I'll get the essence of it. It was August 2023, and the quote went something like this. AI is not going to replace humans, or AI is not going to replace managers, but managers that are going to use AI will replace managers that don't. So let's sit on that. Number one, are you really investing in yourself to get really good at the human side of business? Number two, hopefully you're leaning in and unleashing technology like never before. Shame on you if you're not. And number three, there's a reminder here that because we're in a human-to-human business, people want to feel valued. So if you're a DSM, are you making your DSRs feel valued? If you're the DSR, Are you making your operators feel valued? And I'm going to share a learning from Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah was saying that she's interviewed over 30,000 people over the years, whether it's radio, podcast, TV show, and other mediums that she's used. And she says after every interview, it doesn't matter if this was the president of the United States of America or a serial killer, they always ask the same question. How did I do? So remember, we are all wanting to feel valued and heard and seen and understood. So if I were to bucket these again, number one, really get good at the relationship side. Technology is not going to replace you. It's a yes and, so you can do all the things that are going to add more value. And number three, make sure to make people around you feel valued. And another way to look at it is, are you making people around you better as a result of doing business with you? And that could be anybody that you have the opportunity to interact with internally, externally, partners, customers, and so forth. So I wanted to share those three things. Now, how I'm going to approach this is I believe that if we can answer the next four questions with confidence, you're going to future-proof yourself as a DSR and DSM, and you're going to be relevant, and you're going to separate yourself, and you're going to add so much value that operators will be lined up to do business with you. So let me start with the first question. This is a big question. Would you do business with yourself? It's a question that I reflect on quite a bit. Obviously, I would say most days I would do business with myself, and there's some days maybe not as much when I'm not fully present, when I'm not dialed in, when I'm not listening aggressively, when I'm talking too much, when I'm not prepared. Those are days that I probably wouldn't do business with myself. And when I would do business with myself, it's because a few of these attributes that I'm going to talk about are at play. Number one, I'm fully operating with a growth mindset. What does that mean? Well, if I have a fixed mindset, that means I become a prisoner of my own reference point. I don't want feedback. I view everything as a challenge versus an opportunity. I probably am going to that dark place, maybe even victim mindset sometimes versus owning the problem and saying there's a solution. Here's a story that I think about quite a bit. Johns Hopkins Medical Research Center. They wanted to know, this was in the mid-2000s, I believe it's like 2007. They wanted to know, after people had a heart bypass surgery, what was the percentage of people that actually would make the changes that the physicians recommended? The percentage of people that made the changes only 2 years after they had basically faced death was only 11%. 89% of people basically chose death over change. Now, it's a dramatic example, but if you think about it, here's what takes place every day. So you're calling on operators, you're excited, you love change a bit more than most, but you don't love change, and you're going to be presenting a solution that's about change to someone that probably doesn't like change. I mean, again, wow, that's the conversation that takes place every day. Can't believe I'm going to go Dr. Phil on you, but how's that working for you? Because if you don't do all the things necessary that I'm going to unpack here in a bit, it's going to be hard to lead change. And change is a beautiful thing when it's executed properly. There's a story that I think about quite a bit, and it's the Lego story. What a great reinvention story. So in the early 2000s, Lego was really struggling. They were basically a product company that sold plastic bricks. And so sales are declining, not just with Legos, but let's say in the toy category in general. So imagine they have a moment where they say, look, we have to reimagine what business we're in. What would it look like if we went from product to purpose? And what is the purpose of Lego? And the purpose of Lego really is to foster creativity through play. So imagine suddenly we view ourselves as a company that's in the creativity business and not in the product business. Well, guess what happens? We think about things differently. We partner differently. Suddenly, we've got Legos in school, at STEM schools. We're creating contests where they did something that I'd heard that was great, where they would put designs out there that they thought would be successful. And if they got 10,000 votes, so they would really, who was deciding if the products were going to get launched or not, was the people buying into creativity through the power of these blocks, these plastic blocks, and then they would launch it. They had the Lego movie. They partnered with Hollywood, Star Wars Legos, some of the stores that we've seen. I know there's a great Lego store at downtown Disney in Orlando. And so again, what they did is they changed how they view themselves from a product company to a purpose-driven company. And there's multiple examples of companies that have really led change, whether they were forced to or chose to. I love the Domino's example since we're in the food business and you've all heard it, where ultimately they decided that they were not a pizza company. They were a technology company that happened to sell pizza. And there's this great anecdote where the CEO even said that, look, our pizza basically tastes like cardboard and we're going to improve it because that's what we need to do. And we're going to own technology because we want to be very convenient. We want people to experience the app and everything that goes in between, going from orders or from click to literally your house. And so I look at the Lego example, the Domino's example. It was the power of reframe. It was the power of looking at change. And instead of using the word change, why not call it growth? It's the same thing. Growth is what we're really after. So we don't like change. We love growth. And the research continues to prove that we do really, really well when we go to that growth mindset and when we view change as an opportunity to be better. And as long as we have great leadership and someone's there to really help us navigate through, let's call it the change curve, good things happen. I would do business with myself when I am coming in with curiosity and I'm not being judgmental. So what does that mean? Is I've prepared for my meetings and I'm not afraid to get to the third, fourth why to really understand the other side. And whatever the answers are, I'm not judging those answers. I'm seeking to understand so that potentially I can offer some insights, solutions, counters to what I've heard from the other side. Did you fall in love with the messy middle? Everybody's great at the start of a project. So great, you got accepted at West Point. And then it's going to get messy in those first couple of weeks. How are you going to navigate through the messy middle? So in summary, growth mindset. Oh, one great word. You can go from fixed to growth mindset according to Carol Dweck that wrote the great book called Mindset. That's coined this term growth mindset. Says, if you understand the power of the word yet, here's how it could look. Hey, customer, we just haven't cracked the code on that yet. Hey, Julian, I just need more data. I'm just not there yet. So you can go from fixed to growth in a nanosecond. The second question that I would challenge all of you to ask yourselves not from time to time, on a daily basis. Are you adding so much value as a DSR, as a DSMs, that really your customers should pay you to come and visit them? I know this wouldn't happen, but you're adding so much value as a consultant. You're asking the right questions. You're connecting the dots. You're telling them something they don't know they should know. Another way to put it too is, I always say, if I'm on the buyer side of the desk, I'm looking at the seller from the perspective of, show me that you know me. Did you do your research with tools such as AI, with tools such as Cut and Dry, where you can really dig in and really get all the information you need? How did you show up at the meeting? The power of reframe as a consultant is something else that I would really look at. And I want to share a couple of stories about how we can just go from, let's call it being stuck, to unstucking ourselves with our partner. There was an airline, not going to name names, that was really, really struggling with lost luggage. So they created a committee. Congratulations. Imagine you're on this committee and your job is to try to reduce lost luggage. So you chip away at it. You come up with ideas. You're now at the end of year one and nothing's changed. As a matter of fact, this airline got worse, if you can believe this. So the CEO takes a step back and says, look, I think we need to reframe this challenge. And really, we should look at it from this perspective. What would it take to deliver a world-class passenger experience? Because as you imagine, if you did this, luggage would have to get to the next level. So two things happened. It attracted different people to this project, And number two, of course, they totally crushed it when it came to recovering luggage because they were thinking bigger picture. So that would be one example of a reframe. Other ways to reframe. Let's play the name game. So let's play the game of changing words and seeing what we could change in terms of mindset. So for instance, instead of calling it cost, call it investment. So spending a lot of time in retail where people talk about trade spend, I always correct people and say you may trade investment because trade spend, you get nothing in return. Trade investment, you move forward. So could you change those words? Instead of calling it a challenge, call it an opportunity. Instead of calling it feedback, call it advice. So notice I'm calling the situation really the same. I'm using words that are going to change the energy and get us to that positive place and probably get smarter in terms of the ideas that we do moving forward. Now, as a consultant, what we also understand is what got us here won't get us there. So your job is to really make sure that you've created the conditions in the environment for the people you're doing business with to want to look at the possibilities, to want to explore different ways of moving forward. Let's go now to the third question that I think we should look at. So let's assume you've got a phenomenal mindset. You have acted as a consultant. You've now earned the right to tell a story. Let's call this story selling. How good are you? They once asked Winston Churchill, can you speak now? And he said, look, if I have an hour, I'm ready to go. If I have 2 minutes, I need 2 weeks to prepare. It's very, very hard to boil down a big message into, let's call it, under 2 minutes. Did you hook them? Did you engage them? And did you call them to action? Those are the three things that we would want in this elevator pitch. Another way to frame it up, at Blueprint, my training and development firm, we look at great elevator pitches, answer 4 questions. What we're talking about today, why is this important, or why is this happening? So what for you? So that's the benefits. And then now what would be the call to action? So again, what, why, so what, now what? You answer these 4 questions, you've made it easy for the other person to want to say yes, or at least to start imagining that there's a better way forward. Something else is very important when you're story selling is this concept called retellability. Your story's only as good as how the person that's receiving the story is going to tell that story to someone else. Because here I am as a DSR, I'm talking to the chef, I'm talking to someone from procurement, marketing, sales, owner of the restaurant. They also have other people that influence their decision making. So again, did you make it easy for them to retell that story? What else do I want to say around storytelling? Well, what we do know is you might have a similar bullseye in terms of what you're trying to get across, the feeling. Notice I'm going to use this word feeling, the feeling that you're selling. And you're going to have to repurpose some of the stories, some of the examples to make sure that it appeals to your audience. One of the models that I love is called personality dimensions. And I'm sure all of you have done either Myers-Briggs, DISC, personality dimensions, anything that relates to understanding people's personality types. And if I were to use personality dimensions, that's the one we love using at Blueprint, is there's 4 types of personalities. So I'm going to oversimplify it. If your main color is gold, that means you're all about structure, process, to-do list, 1 + 1 is 2. If your main color is green, that means you're all about competence, knowledge, the why. You want to understand the science. Why are we doing this? And what's the justification for doing it? If your main color is blue, it's all about people and relationships. Even if the idea is great, what you know is if people don't rally around this, it's not going to work. And then finally, if your color is orange, your main attribute here is action. Just do it if you had a t-shirt. Just go do it. We'll figure out the stuff behind us. You like to compete. you love to challenge the status quo. So again, depending on the personality types that I would be telling a story to, I have to adapt my story. For instance, if gold, which is all about the details, is my palest color, because we have all four colors, by the way, when it comes to this, it's just we have a dominant color, and then secondary, third, and then fourth. Well, if gold was my palest color and you looked at my presentations or even my elevator pitch, there's a good chance that probably there wasn't as much details as there in the presentation as there should be. So how do I make sure that I would load this up with data so the goal says, check, we're good to go? So again, have to adjust the presentation, have to make it retellable, and less is more in a perfect world because our attention span is not that great. So that would be how we answer that big question around, did you make it easy for the other person to say yes? And this is all around storytelling. The fourth question would be, the great philosopher Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face or in the mouth. Were you ready when that objection came? Humans don't like change, as I mentioned in my introduction. So if they don't like change, they're going to want to protect themselves. They're going to say something like, well, we tried this 10 years ago. It didn't work. I don't have budget for that. My boss will never approve this. How do we make sure that when the objection comes, so when the person says, look, your price is too high, that you don't even assume you know what that means? So let me play with this. Hey, Julien, I love your idea, love your company. I really want to bring something new to my patrons and really own the Wednesday afternoon where no one's in my restaurant. And I don't have budget to promote this, or your price is too high in terms of what you're proposing we do. Well, I might ask the question next before I start defending price and try to sell value here or try to sell the fact that it's an investment by saying, hey, I appreciate where you're coming from, but could you tell me more? Could you flush that out? Why don't you have budget for this? Or why do you believe that the price is too high for whatever promotion I'm proposing we do here? Chances are the answer is going to be something like this. Well, I tried something like this way back and it failed miserably. Or my dad that looks after my finances, he's an investor. Or my sister that's the accountant in the business will never approve this. I would never accept that as a starting point. I would want to make sure they flush it out. Only if you really know that it's about price, then you start selling value, because price is what you pay, value is what you get, according to Warren Buffett. And I believe that more than ever. A couple other things around objections. So again, quantify and qualify. Once you understand it's the real objection, you can use tools such as feel, felt, found. There's a lot of research around this tool. It was used in customer service, applies really well for all my friends that are DSRs and DSMs, is here's how it would play out. Hey, Julien, I hear what you're saying. I've heard that in my travels, so others are feeling that pain. But what we found is people that invested in this area are not as worried anymore about XYZ. Another way to put it, let's use technology as an example. Let's assume that the barrier here, the objection was, I don't have time for this. It sounds like a lot of work. So I would say, hey, I hear what you're saying. So again, I make them feel that I'm listening to them. They don't want to feel alone. So I'm hearing this exact same thing from everybody else who's going to have time to input all this information. But what we found is people that are using e-commerce solution or that are using AI are not complaining about time once they get it set up properly. As a matter of fact, it saved them 15 days over the course of the year. So I would really invite you, when the objection comes, it is your test. If you can overcome this with confidence, so A, don't assume you know what the objection is, but once you qualify and quantify that, then lean into feel, felt, found with confidence, and you've now made it easy for the other person to say, you know what? I'm taking a chance. It's time to invest in my business. It's time to create excitement on a Wednesday afternoon, if that was the example that I was using. So these are 4 big questions that I think as DSRs and DSMs, we should reflect on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. And if you can answer these 4 questions, number 1, would you do business with yourself? Hopefully the answer is absolutely yes. You've got a growth mindset. You've got grit. You're very curious. You don't judge. You're listening aggressively. Now you've earned the right to be a consultant. And as a consultant, you're able to show me that you know me, that you told me something I didn't know I should know. So imagine I'm your buyer. Who's not going to want to spend time with you? That the questions are the answers. And you weren't afraid to reframe. I use the example of the airline industry. There could be many, many more examples like that. Now, you've crushed it as a consultant. You've earned the right to tell a story. Well, when it was time to tell a story, was your story retellable? Was it concise? Were you able to answer the what, why, so what, now what? Was there a hook in there? You engage me and you call me to action. You do all that. Wow. You've put me in a good position as your business partner to want to say yes. And I'm still going to have a little bit of battle energy because I want to protect myself. I don't like change. So I'm going to throw an objection your way. And if you can overcome that objection, team, yeah, there could be a negotiation, or sometimes you're going to have to deliver a positive no. But for the most part, you put yourself in the best position. You work your process. You can't always guarantee the outcome, and you're going to get more positive outcomes than not because you fall in love with the process. Who wouldn't want to do business with yourself? Hopefully, these questions, these reflections, these insights are going to get you thinking about what do you need to do to be a world-class DSR. And the reason that I will say this applies for DSM is as you're coaching your DSRs, wow, isn't that 4 great questions that you can constantly ask your teams and challenge them with? And please, I just got you going here. Imagine for every question, there could be 4 or 5 buckets. You could have a checklist of what you want people to do as it relates to their mindset. Being a consultant, being a storyteller, handling objections, dealing with courageous conversations, navigating the messy middle, all the things that get in the way of getting to yes. And remember, Richard Branson once said, NO, when your team gets a no, no just means new opportunity. So congratulations. You've answered these 4 big questions with confidence. And it's a quest. It's a journey. You're never really going to be able to say, hey, I've crushed all 4. You're always chipping away at it. I wanted to finish with habits and accountability to self, others, and to the result. And I'm going to start with a story from the book Atomic Habits, the author James Clear, which I think is a must read for all of us. Because if we don't have the right habits, it all falls apart. And he shared the story of the British cycling team. The British cycling team was so bad at one point in the early 2000s that bike manufacturers wouldn't sell them bikes. All kidding aside, they were the bad news bears of cycling. I think their top cyclist was, let's call it 98th in the world or something. The year is 2002. London finds out they're going to host the Olympics, so UK is going to host the Olympics. And they go to a gentleman by the name of David Brailsford and they say, look, David, we got to make this team respectable. The Beijing Olympics are coming up in 2008. So you've got 4 or 5 years to see where you're at there. And then we'll have 2012. So here's what he did. I love what David Brailsford did. He leaned into the theory of marginal gains. Imagine if our cyclists could be 1% better every day. So what would 1% better look like? Well, let me give you an example that he shared in here. Day 1, they hire a surgeon. Imagine this. The surgeon is hired to teach a cyclist how to wash their hands. Because let's bring the best in the world in terms of hygiene when it comes to washing your hands and teach the athletes, because guess what? If they have clean hands, they might not get as sick. They can train harder. Day 2, they bring in a sleep expert. They look at the pillows, room temperature. Could we get our athletes? And this is before we all have this, let's call it, we can't sleep anymore because we're looking at our REM sleeps and watches and 3 a.m. and all that stuff. So this is before the sleep revolution. We're going way back here. If we could help our athletes sleep 15 minutes more, they can train harder. So they just did these series of 1%, 1%. And as Albert Einstein once said, compounding is the 8th wonder of the world. Because if you're 1% better every day, man, imagine how good you're going to be at the end of the year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And the story of the British cycling team is really amazing. 66 medals at the Olympics while David Brailsford was with the program. If you watched Paris in 2024, they dominated again. I think it's something like 180 plus world championships. This includes all the various categories, para, women's, men's. And then something like 5 Tour de France from some of the members of the British cycling team. So with that said, What would 1% better look like for your daily habits? So replace cycling with being a DSR, a DSM. What could you do that would make a massive difference? And here's what I also know. As my coach once told me, Julien, if it's not scheduled, it's not going to happen. So if we open your calendar and you said this was a priority this year, I better see it in your calendar. So let's be 1% better. Couple other things around habits. Consistency over motivation. There's some interesting research that was done at University of London. And no, it's not 21 days, as most people answer when I say, how many days does it take to install a habit? I always get the answer 21 days. 21-day beach body, 21-day diet. The research that was done at University of London showed 66 days on average. So if you back out the weekends, you're pretty much looking at those first 90 days. I want to share one more thing around habits, is constantly pushing yourself to go one step above. So if it's 1% better, do you have the right mindset when it comes to your habits? And one of my favorite stories in the food business is the story of 11 Madison Park. The restaurateur was Will Guidara. And this particular restaurant was always, well, not always, for a bunch of years, they were top 100 in the world. And they had this aspiration of what would it take to be number one in the world? So they kind of listened to, once they would go to these awards in Paris at the big show and realize they weren't number one, they would listen to the stories. And really, at this level, the food was world-class with all these restaurants, Michelin chefs. So we're not just competing with food, we're competing with the experience. And so what they decided in the restaurant is they were going to find ways to deliver unexpected value. A little bit like, hey, what would that 1% look like? We don't need to toss a lot of money, but would really, instead of people just looking at the experience through the lens of we were expecting great, suddenly we were not expecting that. Therefore, we're now an Uber fan. We're going to tell all our friends on social media, and who knows where this restaurant could go in terms of ranking. And Will Guidara shares a story where there was someone that was dining in their restaurant. They were from Europe, and they had just finished going to all the great restaurants, the Momofuku's of the world, the Nobu in New York. And they were leaving the next day after their experience at 11 Madison Park, and they had not had a New York hot dog. So without missing a beat, I love this, people. Will went across the street, and because they ate hot dogs for some of the street vendors from time to time, and got his favorite hot dog, convinced his Michelin chefs, can you imagine this, to plate the hot dog. So you imagine the presentation was still beautiful, and brought it to the table. Well, if you would have heard the reaction based on how Will describes it, all these people wanted to talk about was the hot dog. So they go back to Europe, they tell their friends, it lands on who knows how many magazines, the story, the food blogs, and the rest is story. This restaurant in the year 2016 became the number one restaurant in the world. I would encourage you to read the book, Unreasonable Hospitality, or even watch his TED Talk. So I just kind of gave you a glimpse of the story. And ultimately, here's the big question for you. What's your hot dog in your business? So you're a DSR. How are you delivering unexpected value? And I think that if you can form the right habits, make sure that these are scheduled so that every day, consistency over motivation. And probably your rally cry as a DSR when it comes to habit is answering that big question. What is your hot dog? And if you think about that every day and go into every sales call with, hey, I'm going to tell you something you don't know you should know about your business, or I'm going to bring some unexpected value, who is not going to want to do business with you and tell other friends, hey, you should be using this particular DSR from this particular company because they do X, Y, Z. As I close this podcast, first of all, thank you again, Cut and Dry. This would not be possible for all of us to continue to learn and grow together if we didn't have you as a sponsor. And I want to share this final thought, since I just finished thanking our sponsor, is someone said, Julien, you work with a lot of amazing DSRs, DSMs, marketing teams, anybody that's responsible. And really what I should have said at the start is I believe we all sell, influence, and negotiate. Doesn't matter what role you play within the distributor you work for, within the manufacturer you work for, within the operator you work for. we're all technically selling because we're all helping create a value prop that's going to be presented to the world, and hopefully the world will benefit from it. But in this case, I'm going to use DSRs and DSMs. I've never, ever met a salesperson that says, look, Julie, I love what I do. My job might not be perfect every day, but I love my customers. I love my team. I love my products. I love my company. I love the challenges / opportunities that present themselves every year, every day. Well, I guess every year, but every day, every week, every month, to really add value that's not completely separating themselves from everybody else. There's a great quote from Jack Clark. He's the winningest rugby coach. I think he's one of the winningest NCAA coaches ever. 22 national championship, University of California. And he says, grateful for everything, entitled to nothing. And I think if we all went in with that mindset, that we are grateful for the opportunities in front of us, and just because we do all the work that I mentioned here, answering the 4 questions, considering those 3 things that I mentioned at the start around owning relationship, really leaning into technology, and making sure that everybody around you feels valued, you're not entitled to anything. You're putting yourself in the best position to succeed. So if you haven't found gratitude, or if you've lost gratitude, I would encourage you, maybe it's a gratitude journal. Maybe just write one thing at the end of each day for what you're grateful for your customers, for your day job, and it might rewire your mindset. Here's what I also know. When there's joy at play, great things happen. And this is a fantastic business. You all got into this business for a reason. You like food, you like helping others, you like challenging yourself. Of course, you like making money. This is also a way to pay some bills and have a great livelihood. So why not rewire? And in the spirit of reframing, I gave you a couple of examples of how Lego, Domino's, they reframe things. Or I gave you examples around the power of words. Let's not look at this as a transactional business. Let's look at this as a partnership business. And there's a great quote around selling where Jeffrey Gitmer said, no one wants to be sold to, people love to buy. You are not selling anything, my DSR and DSM friends. You're helping people buy. And my hope is that you go in with that approach, you unleash technology, you get so good at the people side of things, and you help people feel good about the process. That's the value piece. And keep on being great. So with that said, until next time, and if you're not joining us in Miami, you're missing out. If you are, I'll see you soon, gang, and can't wait to learn and grow with all of you. Go get them. Cheers.
This episode is brought to you by Cut & Dry, the only independently verified digital ordering platform that combines e-commerce, payments, and sales tools to help food service distributors sell over 10% more cases within a year. Here's the truth. E-commerce isn't just about going digital. It's about getting discovered. That's why, since 2009, Cut & Dry has led the industry in transforming your inventory into online custom apps that are easy to search, explore, and for your customers to uncover new products. Join us today at cutandDry.com.